What's good everyone, I'm Zayas, and today I'm here to review Angel Densetsu by Norihiro Yagi. This was his first serialized work in Shonen Jump after having drawn Undead Man as a one-shot, and these works were a lot more comedy focused compared to his later works, which were a lot more serious fantasy worlds like Claymore and Sokyo no Ariadne. Claymore is easily his most popular series. It had a really successful anime adaptation, but it feels like Angel Densetsu is way more complete as a series and is just better in a lot of regards. Also, fun fact, Akihisa Ikeda, aka the author of Rosario to Vampire, was actually an assistant on this work, which I found to be very surprising because of how different their manga ended up being. You will notice one problem with the series right off the bat, and that's the artwork. The artwork in this series is not good. You got weak outlines, the proportions look really weird, and they're changed between panels very often. There's tons of empty space everywhere, and at times the series almost looks faded in a sense. There is improvement in the artwork as you get further along, but even at its best, I'd say it's basically just tolerable. The early artwork in this series is actually very similar to Undead Man, and I'm really glad he changed away from that because it looks like a 70s gag manga, even though this is from the 90s. It looks very dated. There's a couple good things about the artwork. The delinquent themes and aesthetic did come across well. The other thing is the women. Women in this series are much better designed and look a lot better than the men. Kitano can get a pass because he's intentionally meant to look scary, but there's other characters like Takahisa and just other side characters which look almost equally as bad as Kitano, and you know the author wasn't trying to make him look this bad. Partway into this series, a lot more female characters are introduced, and it kind of makes me wonder if he realized that he's not that great at drawing male characters, so he just decided to draw a bunch of female characters instead, which did look a lot better. And that also makes me think that Claymore had a cast that was primarily female because of this reason. Even with the subpar artwork, it doesn't detract too much from this series. And past the art, there's a lot to like about this series. The humor was incredible. Very few series have gotten me to chuckle in a way that this one did. The situations that Kitano finds himself in are just so out there and so ridiculous, it's really funny. I found one of my favorites to be whenever somebody would see this guy's face, they would assume that he's a junkie. And every time that happened, I thought it was hilarious. And there's plenty of other crazy situations that Yagi thinks up. Sometimes Kitano will just chase people down the street to return like their dollar or something. And while doing this, he has this shriek that he lets out, his signature shriek, and he has this crazy looking running form. All of these things make me think this guy maybe is on drugs. Just for that. On top of Kitano just naively walking into these stupid scenarios, Kuroda is also a big contributor to the madness. This dude is pushed around by literally everyone in the series and he hasn't won a fight, but I will always find it funny when this guy is super full of himself, he has a big ego, and he literally loses every single time in fights, in love, in like literally anything. This guy cannot win. There's more to this series than just humor though. There are some great characters, and there is a little bit of romance too. Around the 10 to 15-ish chapter mark, I was hoping for a little more comedy like the beginning, and less focus on characters, which he was doing, because at first the characters weren't really written that well, but eventually everything does come together, and when it does, it's great. Kitano is great. The messaging behind his character can feel a little cheesy at times, just because it's so straightforward and obvious. You know, just don't judge a book by its cover, and has been told like 1,000 times before. Luckily, the series isn't cheesy too often, and instead of focusing, on other people misjudging Kitano, it focuses more on how Kitano treats other people, and he does so in a very kind, compassionate manner, and he always assumes the best in people even when he really shouldn't. This could be because he is aware of how other people treat him because of his appearance, or it could just be that he's actually just that innocent and that naive, and I'm more inclined to believe the second one, but the first one could be true. And his childlike innocence really lead to a lot of hilarious scenarios, so I kind of ended up enjoying just how oblivious Kitano was to everything. Kuroda actually grew to be one of my favorite characters towards the end of the series. He was really the punching bag of the series, and he was cowardly, he lied a lot, he was weak, he was idiotic. There's a lot of negatives about him, but no matter what, he had a lot of persistence and dedication. He never gave up. He would keep fighting people even though he was weak. He would keep trying to go after Koiso even though he knew he had no shot. So at some point you just gotta admire the man for never giving up. His scenes also ended up being some of the funnier ones. And there's no shortage of likable characters either. In the interest of time, I only talk about a few, but there's tons of different arcs, tons of memorable characters that came out of this series. And there's like this whole line of fighting addicts. You got Koiso, she's this fighting addict who pretends she's not a fighting addict. You got Ikuno, she's this really awkward fighting addict. You got Takahisa, the tsundere fighting addict. You got Ogisu, who's just the incredibly addicted fighting addict. Each character has their own little quirks, and there's a lot to each of these characters, but there's even other characters on top of this, like the main cast parents, the shadowy seven, the new neighbor family that moved in. There's just so many different things about this series, about characters that were done pretty well. I'd say what all these characters have in common is that there's something weird or strange about each of them, and that kind of solidifies their personalities and makes them interesting, but they also feel very human because outside of that, they're just a normal school kid in this delinquent school. The romance was cute when it happened. I do wish there was a little bit more, however, because there wasn't really that much. The ending did come through with the romance, so that's good. And I think the ending in general was a very solid conclusion to the series. It had a lot of what makes it good, you know, the comedy, the romance, the characters, and it was a nice way to tie things together. It's a very good delinquent series. There are a few low points when the series is really just trying to figure things out and feel things out, and the artwork is just not good. I'm feeling a light to decent 8. Like and subscribe, leave a comment about any manga you want me to review or just manga in general. I'll try to get back to it. I've been thinking maybe Oshi no Ko next or Skip to Loafer because they have animes and they're probably a little more popular. I'll see you guys in the next one.